Okay, good afternoon. So earlier today, Primary Industries Minister David Carter announced that the National Lead Government will earmark an initial $80 million to assist with the development of important regional water infrastructure. The $80 million investment has been set aside in Budget 2013 for the establishment and initial stages of the company's operation to act as a bridging investor for regional water infrastructure development. The development of well-designed commercial-scale storage and irrigation infrastructure has the potential to deliver significant economic growth for our primary industries and support new jobs, which will then have a flow-on effect for other New Zealanders. This was highlighted in the 2010 economic report, which suggested that going ahead with current proposals in areas like Hawke's Bay and Canterbury could generate an additional $1.4 billion in export receipts by 2018. It will also have benefits for the environment and recreational users. This investment is part of the National Lead Government's delivering on one of its 4 key promises this term, that is building a more competitive and productive economy that is capable of supporting more jobs and, of course, higher incomes. The principle behind the government's commitment is to encourage private investors to participate in irrigation development. It's also another step towards unlocking the massive opportunities that more and better water infrastructure create for our country. New Zealand naturally has plenty of water. This is about managing it better for the economy and for the environment. The $80 million investment is part of the $400 million from the Future Investment Fund that the government signalled in 2011 it planned to invest to encourage third-party capital investment. A number of groups are already developing proposals for larger regional level schemes, and the government expects to consider at least one proposal in the next year. In terms of ministerial activity, and my activities for the rest of the week, tomorrow I'm attending the Rata celebrations during the day, and then I head to Auckland for a celebration dinner for this year's Prime Minister's Youth Programme participants. The 100 young people who take part in the youth programme each year have overcome real challenges in their lives, and some have been on the edge of trouble, but all have made positive changes in their lives. I'm impressed by their attitude and determination to succeed. On Friday I'll be giving my first speech of the year in Auckland. This speech will have a strong economic focus and will set out aspects of the government's busy programme for 2013. And just for noting, there's no cabinet next week, therefore there'll be no post-cabinet press conference on Monday. Can't have a post-cabinet press conference, we don't actually have a cabinet. So the next one, of course, will be on Monday the 4th of February. Next Tuesday, Tuesday after that, the House resumes for 2013, and I'll be giving my statement to Parliament.
Prime Minister, Minister Sharples has signalled a potential partnership with the Mana Party. Could you work with the Māori Mana partnership?
Oh, look, I'm not going to get into all of the different parts of that. What I'd say is the government has a confidence and supply agreement with the Māori Party. That was to provide stable government over the next, over this 3-year parliamentary term. I'm sure that will be honoured, and whatever else they do is one point a matter for them. But I think Honi Harawira has made his position when it comes to the National Party very clear, and it's mutual. So there's no love lost there.
So would you be happy for Peter Sharples to stay on as Minister if he is defeated this leader?
Well, that's something we'd have to work through with the leadership of the Māori Party. If you think back to the precedent for this, that was Heather Roy when she was a minister. There was a change in leadership, change in view, or change in deputy leadership of the ACT Party. What I said at the time is, while as Prime Minister I reserve the right to obviously determine who's in Cabinet and who's out, I also take strong guidance from the leadership of our confidence and supply partners. So if there was a change in leadership, then they may well have a view on the makeup of the ministerial warrants, who should have those. I've indicated that there will be 2 for the Māori Party, so I think that would be up for discussion with that leadership.
So you would rule out working with a party that included Honi Harawira?
Well, it's not really so much that. I mean, he's effectively ruled us out, so it's irrelevant what I probably think on the matter. Just saying it's the feelings are mutual. But look, in the end of the day, there's a lot of ifs, buts and maybes of all the things that you're talking about. I mean, my strong suggestion would be if they do something well, that may well be into the future, but I don't think it's going to affect this 3-year parliamentary cycle from 11 to 14.
How's it
If this
equivalent to
partnership does come
Udo's
together
level
for
in
the
a
next
ministerial
election?
role?
Well, as I said just before, I mean, my view is that I would take strong guidance from the leadership of the Maori Party of who they want to have ministerial warrants, and that as the leaders stand today, they're obviously Taliana. If there was a change, and if there was a change in recommendation, see it as a showstopper. Great faith in Te Reo Flavel, but in the end, the leadership of the Maori Party is a matter for the members.
So you would rule out letting Dr. Sharple stay on as minister if he was pushed out as co-leader of the party?
No, what I said was I'd take guidance from the leadership.
If that was
If
the
there's a change of leadership, then obviously I'll engage with the new leaders, because it's essentially the Maori Party that's formed a confidence and supply agreement with the National Party, and in good faith I deal with the leadership that's in place at the time.
Has Taliana Tulia contacted you? She has asked Dr. Sharples to stand down. Have you had any discussions with her given the government's arrangements?
In recent times, you mean, or in terms of her own position?
Well, relatively recently. I mean, it's obviously come to a head today. Sharples saying that she has asked him to stand down.
Oh, sorry, in recent times, no, she hasn't contacted. But the last sort of real contact I had with Taliana was just prior to the announcement she made that she wasn't going to re-stand in 2014. Obviously, I'm very disappointed about that, but I can completely understand.
But obviously, I mean, I suppose Mrs. Tulia, with the expectation that she would remain on as co-leader, she would be the person or one of the people that you would be taking guidance from in terms of those ministerial roles.
Of course, she remains the co-leader. So, look, at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of, as I said, ifs and buts and maybes in this whole debate. And if there is a leadership challenge, as this indicator is likely to be, then I'll, like everybody else, wait and see what the outcome of that result is. Whenever we know that result, I'll engage with the leadership team, whatever that looks like.
Have you got any concerns about confidence and supply, about the actual, obviously you don't need to rely on the Māori Party for the numbers,
No.
but any concerns at all about that arrangement with a change of leadership at all?
No, I don't. I mean, look, my view is that the Maori Party are good, honourable people. They've worked effectively with National now for the last 4 years. They made a strong commitment to come as part of our government and to provide good, stable government for New Zealand. And I think they'll honour their commitment. And if there's a change of leadership, I don't anticipate any changes in the way that we operate. Of course, as I said, there may be changes in terms of the ministerial makeup, but not in terms of the nature of the relationship.
Because there has been a precedent too with Rodney Hyde when Don Bush was leader outside the party, but he kept his ministerial role
Correct.
while he lost the leadership, so it's not necessarily out of scope that could happen.
Well, that's right. It's not impossible for the Maori Party to have a leader that's not a member of Parliament. I mean, by definition, that person couldn't be a member of the executive, but they would be the leader of the party. And as was the case when Don Brash became the leader, I can't remember whether we actually had a discussion at that point about ministerial warrants very late in the piece, but effectively it was a moot point because he couldn't have taken the warrant under those conditions.
Prime Minister, where to from here for David Bain issue?
So Minister Collins gave Cabinet a really brief update about the process. There wasn't any conclusions drawn or a huge amount of debate undertaken. She simply indicated the next steps of the process that she's embarking upon and agreed to come back to Cabinet with further recommendations for us. And she's likely to do that at the next available Cabinet, which I think is the 4th of February.
Is it likely that another person will be appointed to inquire into the deal?
Well, they're all the sorts of issues that she's grappled with. That's exactly right.
So can you just outline what are exactly the next steps?
Well, she'll need to consider the process that now has to happen. And sort of effectively, think about it, Rob Fisher, QC, didn't complete his report, complete part 1 of his report, which was the critiquing of Binny's assessment of the situation. There's other work that he could do or another person could do, either domestically or offshore. So there's a range of different potential options, and she'll come back with some more advice in due course.
Are you
But
concerned about the expense?
Sorry?
Are you concerned about the expense?
Well, look, at one level, obviously, I'm always cautious with the expenditure of government money. So whenever people say, well, the money doesn't matter, well, a certain degree that's was true and was not true. So yes, of course, I'm mindful of that, but I'm also mindful of the fact that it's really important that this is done professionally and right, and this is a very high-profile situation. If you think about these kinds of cases in New Zealand's history, ones with this level of profile you can count on one hand. So money is important, but I think it's actually important that we reach a robust conclusion that New Zealanders can understand why we've reached that decision.
So are you saying that
new
second review, are you saying that second review is going to take place? It just depends.
No, I'm
on
saying
the-
she's going to come back with advice on what the next step is.
So
Do you
the
see
door
merit
had to
in
be
the new
closed on the Benny report now, that that's shelved?
I think it's fair to say that the Minister doesn't feel confident to take a recommendation based on the Binney report to Cabinet. So in that regard, yes. And I think if you look at the work that Rob Fisher did and his critiquing of that, my assessment of others' review of Rob Fisher's work is that they actually agree with what he's done. I mean, they're not finding fault in his legal arguments that he's presented about the Binney report. So I think in that regard, both the Minister I think the Minister's been vindicated with the steps that she took.
So logically, if that report is over and done with, in terms of the government's view, there would have to be a second report, wouldn't there?
Well, most probably, but as I say, let's just run through the process of what happens next.
Prime Minister, on the irrigation investments, if they're going to be profitable schemes, why does the government need to effectively subsidise private investors?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and the answer is it's about the timing of these schemes. So it's, in principle, if you think about irrigation schemes, they rely on a lot of small investors getting together at one point in time to provide the capital funding for the scheme. And obviously one way of forcing that would be to change water access rights for farmers who currently, for instance, might have a free take and have no real need in their mind for irrigation. So it's never straight line. If you look at the Opua scheme, that was an example where we did manage to get a whole lot of people to agree at one point, but more often than not, you'll get farmers with at different points of the investment cycle. Some of them will be older, not wanting to take more debt on the farm, sort of happy that it has a lower return, but also has a lower level of investment. Then you have a lot of young new farmers who can see the financial returns over a long working period. So sometimes this is just a facilitation mechanism for allowing that investment to take place as people join, and more often than not people do join up to these schemes when they're there. So we think there's some real economic logic in them happening. The report we commissioned in 2010 supports that, and it's about facilitating that timing.
How is this different, though, from perhaps the government putting in seed funding for, let's say, a second optic fibre cable?
Yeah, so in the case of the irrigation schemes, the intention is for them to still provide an economic return to the government. So there is an intention that there will be a return on capital, and that we will be effectively an investor that gets our money back. Now, obviously there are risks, but we're reasonably confident we can manage those risks. I think in the case of the Pacific Fibre cable proposal, that was kicked around extensively by officials, and I saw a number of reports from memory in relation to that proposal. And in the end, the view was it just didn't economically stack up, that there was lots of capacity on the Southern Cross cable still existing, and that there was likely, any new entrant was likely to meet with substantial potential price reductions which would really challenge the viability. And to a certain degree, I think the government again has been vindicated in that view, because you've had some very high profile, very high net worth individuals who went out both domestically and globally seeking funding for the Pacific Fibre cable and couldn't get the investors. So what that tells you is they themselves were confident this thing actually economically stacked up.
Is that expectation of a return on the investment a new policy on behalf of the government? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember when it was originally announced, it was seen by the government as a straight subsidy with no return.
No, I don't think that's right. I think that certainly the view is we'll get our money back. We'll get much of a dividend back is another, on top of that is another issue. But the expectation is it's literally is an investment, and that investment would be returned and we would exit our investment in those projects.
Just on overpay, there's been some talk about strike action, I was just wondering if you were concerned that that might go, even if you understand as well where teachers are coming from when they start talking about taking affirmative action.
Well, I understand where they're coming from, but I think, let me say a few things. I mean, firstly, government has made it clear via the Ministry of Education that if there's a problem in terms of a school and the payment to those teachers, that we will make that school whole by ensuring that that funding is available for them, immediately through their ops grant. So no one should actually be out of pocket. Some people can certainly be inconvenienced, and that's unquestionably been the case, and I accept completely the frustration. Secondly, no one wants to get it for the system to be resolved and the issues to go away more than we do, but this is a complex system that's clearly had some problems in its rollout. Personally, I would strongly advise not taking strike action. They can see by my actions yesterday that I'm taking it seriously. We're putting in a very senior minister to try and resolve these issues as quickly as we can, and I'm not quite sure what striking would do. I mean, you strike to get an outcome, and we're giving them an outcome, which is the most senior minister and a lot of focus of cabinet. Yeah, of course we could rip up the scheme, but where would that leave us with no one getting paid? So personally, I'd call their heels if I was there.
Stephen Lewis didn't rule out cancelling the contract with Talent 2, and a few of the principals that we've spoken to today have suggested doing that as well. How likely is that?
Well, I don't want to cut across what he's thinking because I haven't had any reports from him and any real update from him. But, I mean, look, in principle, we rely on New Zealand teachers being paid via that scheme. If it's not that scheme, then the question is what system? And I don't have an answer to that question. So I think we're trying to resolve the issue as opposed to break it apart. But let's see where he comes back in fullness time.
But perhaps Talent 2 isn't the right organisation for the job.
I wouldn't want to comment on that this point.
So Stephen just met with officials from the Education Ministry yesterday. Did he not give Cabinet an update today?
No, not yet.
There was no discussion about the issue?
No, not update yet, no.
And the financial penalty, is there any idea or is there any estimation as to how much that would be?
I don't have an update on that number.
Prime Minister, the Bank of Japan yesterday announced unlimited money printing from next year to devalue the yen.
Yeah.
As Tourism Minister, are you concerned about what that does for the New Zealand dollar versus the yen and the risk of global currency wars, tit-for-tat money printing?
Well, first you've already seen a devaluation in the yen. I think that happened after the election, closely following this sort of initially happened. Secondly, yeah, of course that's a concern if people are engineering a lower exchange rate through the fiscal easing policies. But go back to what can New Zealand do about that, and any country that embarks upon printing money, has to think fully through all the ramifications of that. Now, in the case of Japan, they've had very low levels of inflation. That hasn't been their problem for a very long period of time. But it's something they'd have to consider how they would manage that, just like the United States is. I still think from New Zealand's perspective, we're on the right path. I think printing money wouldn't necessarily see a devaluation in our exchange rate. And if you look in Australia, they've had quite a number of interest rate cuts in recent times. In fact, the exchange rate's appreciated, not depreciated. So there's not always necessarily a straight correlation. It's also been the case in the US. There's been a lot of different factors driving that. So look, in the end, it's a risk, but it just sits in that whole basket of issues which are real out there, which is that the global economy is still not fully healed. And that is one of the risks that we face, that the US can't deal with its fiscal cliff issues, or that there are problems in Europe, or there's problems in Asia. And that's why I think we're in better shape than we probably were in 2012 globally, but we're not out of the woods.
The Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard's announced that the national security strategy with a stronger focus on the region, countering terrorism and cyber security. Have you had any briefings at all about?
I think our officials were getting a briefing. I haven't seen that briefing yet. I'm sure my people will give me something overnight. In principle, we're singing from the same song sheet when it comes to cyber security. We think that's a real risk. We saw that work that was agreed, or the work program that was agreed between New Zealand and the UK when William Hague was out here. And we think that is a genuine area of risk for New Zealand.
Just one more question on Motorcade. Sorry, we've been told that there are potentially hundreds of flaws or bugs in the system. Is there a chance that the system is so flawed that it cannot be fixed, that you will have to move on to something else?
Well, there's always a risk. As I said yesterday, you don't know what you don't know. there are potential unknowns in no pay. And the first thing that Stephen Joyce rightfully is doing is effectively getting a stock take of those and trying to understand them. I mean, at one level, there's been some real improvement. I mean, basically the bulk of teachers have been paid and things have sort of starting to calm down a little bit. Now, that hopefully is going in the right trajectory. But I just can't answer those questions yet because I don't know. If you come back in a week or so, I hope I'll have better information for you.
British Prime Minister Cameron has said that he would offer an in or out referendum vote for British voters to go out of the European Union.
Yeah.
Would New Zealand be concerned if Britain was to exit the European Union? What might that mean?
Well, it's a matter solely for them. Obviously, we see a debate that's been waging there for quite some time. And look, in the end, I guess the UK would have to decide whether they think they're better off being in or out of the European Union. It's not a straightforward decision, is it? I mean, a huge amount of their trading base is now with Europe. It has quite substantial implications, but as you can see, domestically, it's a pretty big, hot issue, devolving more and more power to Brussels, and that's the conundrum that they face. I mean, from New Zealand's point of view, Britain is an important market to us, but it's nowhere near as significant as it was even a decade ago, let alone back before 1970. So, yeah, it's of some concern, but not major.
Can I just clarify one more thing about the minority partnership?
Oh, yeah.
If that deal does go ahead, or if that partnership does go ahead before the next election, would that be a deal breaker for the relationship with the minority?
Well, like I say, there's so many if, buts and maybes, but when you just go back to the most fundamental principle, if you're talking about Honi Harawira, he's put it in the plainest language as he can, that he doesn't want to deal with national, and as I've said, the feelings are mutual. But, let's just sort of see how all of these things play out. There's a lot of water to flow under that rocker.
So that sounds like a deal breaker though.
Oh, well, like I say, it's... Okay, 2 weeks.